Okay, so you might remember a few years back, this headline popped up that sounded like a total joke. The US wants to buy Greenland. It was easy to laugh off, right? But what if I told you this idea wasn't just some random thought, that it was actually pulled from a playbook for American power that's over a century old? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig right into the Greenland Gambit. And that's the big question, isn't it? Why on earth would a global superpower want to buy a gigantic island of ice? As we're about to see, the answer has almost nothing to do with real estate and everything to do with military strategy, a new Cold War for resources, and a very, very old-school vision of American power.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the surprising proposal itself. Then we'll get into the two main arguments for it, its role as a key military outpost, and the mad dash for the resources hidden under all that ice. And finally, we're going to connect all of this to a forgotten part of American history and a brand new doctrine that could seriously shape the future.
All right, so let's rewind to when this story first hit the news. The reaction from pretty much the entire world was, well, disbelief. It was mostly seen as this big, bombastic, and, frankly, kind of unserious idea. More of a publicity stunt than an actual foreign policy move. This quote pretty much captures the whole vibe of the proposal, doesn't it? It felt way less like formal diplomacy and a lot more like a guy trying to flip a piece of property. But behind that casual talk, there was a very serious number being thrown around.
Yeah, the figure that was floated was about $3.3 billion. And while that sounds like an insane amount of money for a sheet of ice, the people who supported the idea argued it was a strategic bargain. And that brings us to the first huge reason why: geopolitics.
Okay, so let's peel back that first strategic layer, the military argument. This is all about controlling a super important piece on the global chessboard, a piece that's getting more and more critical as the Arctic ice continues to melt. To really get the military angle here, you have to know about something called the GIUK Gap. It's basically a naval choke point, a line in the ocean stretching from Greenland to Iceland to the UK. Any navy coming out of northern Russia has to pass through it to get into the open Atlantic. So you can see why monitoring this gap is a really big deal. And here's why this is so critical right now. Russia has been seriously ramping up its submarine patrols in this exact area. I mean, their main naval base is sitting just on the other side of this gap. Owning Greenland would give the U.S. a permanent front-row seat, a strategic listening post to watch every single move they make. And this isn't some new idea either. It's something NATO has been quietly worrying about for years. Look, this isn't just some theoretical threat. NATO is already taking this very, very seriously. They're running huge naval exercises up there, like Arctic Light, specifically to counter what Russia's doing. From the perspective of those who want to buy Greenland, these exercises are just a temporary fix. Owning the land? Well, that would make the defense permanent.
But hey, security isn't just about submarines. The second major reason behind this whole idea is economic. We're talking about a new kind of Cold War over natural resources, and the main competitor is China. To understand the economic argument, we've actually got to travel back in time to another really controversial land deal. Back in 1867, the U.S. paid Russia $7.2 million for Alaska, and at the time, pretty much everyone thought it was a terrible, terrible idea. It was famously called Seward's Folly after the Secretary of State who pushed for it. The press, the public, they all thought it was a huge waste of money for a frozen wasteland. Sound a little familiar?
But then, they found gold. And after that, they found oil. Suddenly, Seward's Folly turned into one of the smartest investments in American history. And so the argument today goes, what if Greenland is just the 21st century version of Alaska? So what's the new gold in oil? Rare earth minerals. These are the elements that power basically everything we use, from our smartphones to our most advanced military tech. And here's the kicker. China is already in Greenland, actively trying to lock down mining contracts. For U.S. strategists, that's a massive red flag. Buying Greenland would, in theory, solve two problems at once. It would secure a critical supply chain for the U.S., and just as importantly, it would block a major rival from setting up shop right in America's backyard. Now, this whole idea of just buying territory, it feels really strange to us today, doesn't it? It sounds like something out of a different century. And that's because it is. For the first 100+ years of its existence, this is exactly how the United States grew. I mean, just look at the map. The Louisiana Purchase from France in 1803 literally doubled the size of the country. Florida was bought from Spain. A massive chunk of the West was acquired from Mexico, but even that involved a payment of $15 million.
American expansion wasn't always about war. A lot of the time, it was just a giant real estate deal.
But then, after World War II, the strategy did a complete 180. The U.S. stopped buying land and started buying influence. Instead of direct expansion, American power was projected indirectly through things like sanctions, alliances, and, covert operations. The Greenland proposal is so jarring because it feels like a throwback to that older, much more direct and transactional way of thinking.
So what does this all add up to? If you put the military piece, the economic piece, and the historical piece together, what you get is more than just a real estate deal. You might be looking at a whole new philosophy for American foreign policy. This idea of playing offense is really the key here. The thinking is that for too long, American foreign policy has been reactive, just responding to crises. This represents a huge shift, a desire to make big, bold, forward-looking moves to secure U.S. interests for the next 40 or 50 years.
And some have called this proactive approach the Donroe Doctrine, a very deliberate play on the famous Donroe Doctrine. See, the old Donroe Doctrine was defensive. It was basically a big stay-out sign hung on the Western Hemisphere. This new Donroe Doctrine is all offense. It's not just about keeping other countries out, it's about the U.S. proactively going in and locking down strategic assets like Greenland's resources to cement its dominance.
And so we're left with this really fascinating question. For the last 70 years or so, American power has been all about influence. Is the future about ownership? Could this seemingly bizarre proposal to buy Greenland actually signal a return to a much older, more transactional kind of power? It's a pretty wild idea, and it forces all of us to ask what it really means to be a superpower in the 21st century.